What's going on, guys? I've decided to start recording, starting a YouTube channel just so I can try to hold myself accountable for my projects. And I figured maybe if I record it and put it up on YouTube, maybe I will work on the car a little bit more and get it done quicker. Because obviously, anyone who's been following along on Instagram before I started posting these videos, they know that the STI has been down for quite a while. Since then, I've actually gotten 2 other cars that I'm gonna run through today, just to give everyone kind of an update and an idea of what I'm working with and where they all stand as far as the priority goes and what needs to be done first and what I daily drive and all that. So I guess now that I've took the time to clean the garage, because who wants to see a messy garage, I can kind of dive in and sort of see what we're working with here. So I guess we will start off maybe with this guy, my Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 8. So I guess we can start where everyone probably wants to see the most. This unfortunately is the car that I probably know the least a bit about. When I bought the car, I bought it from a guy who did a swap where he had a clean RS shell and he had a very nice working GSR motor. So he took the GSR motor, swapped it into the RS shell, swapped over the ECU, swapped over the tachometer and the dash gauges so that the mileage would reflect the motor that's in it. When I bought it, I didn't really know that until I started poking around the engine bay, and that's when I realized that there was an extra harness that was hanging out in the back of the engine bay, kind of just tucked away. So that harness ended up actually being the ABS harness, which I didn't realize was there to begin with. Then when I poked around a little bit, I kind of realized and put 2 and 2 together that the ABS never came in the RS model, so there's nowhere for it to plug into. So the ECU obviously is okay with that, but the gauge that's on there, it's a GSR gauge cluster, and so there is no light. And when I asked the guy about that after I purchased the car, he had said, oh yeah, you know, I had the light on there, but instead of figuring out how to actually delete the harness, he just pulled the bulb so that when I bought it, I wouldn't see the fact that there was in fact an ABS light on. So it is something I'd have to deal with. Luckily, it's a 2003, so it's sort of an old car, so it wouldn't really matter as far as inspection processes go. It's old enough that it should just be able to pass a simple inspection. But with that being said, let's take a look at the engine. One of the things that is wrong with it, if anybody does have it, this does not have a hood latch cable. So if anyone out there watching this does have a hood latch cable and they want to sell it for an Evo 8, let me know, because I'm in the market. Because otherwise, what I have to do is I have this little guy down here, which is literally just a zip tie that I have to pull in order to pop the hood open, which obviously isn't ideal. You can see it's a pretty standard Evo 8 engine. Let me take you a little closer inside. So this is the motor for my 2003 Evo 8 RS with a GSR motor in it. As far as I can tell, most things are pretty stock on it. When I bought the car, I didn't really check it too much. Obviously, I looked over to make sure there wasn't anything crazy going on, no rod knock or anything like that. I did drive it around the parking lot when I bought it, and it drove fine, honestly. It was a very raw feeling car, as most people would say with this era of a Japanese sports car. So if we can dive into it, obviously we have a 4G63T motor in here from Mitsubishi. It's a 2.0 liter. As far as I know, the only things that are really done to it are apparently it has HKS 272 cams, which I do believe is a pretty normal setup for Evos to run, where this still has, I believe, the stock TD05 16G turbo, which is on the smaller side for a turbo. Back in the day, it was a decently good turbo, especially for like mid 300s power. With the HKS 272s, apparently with the longer duration on the intake and the exhaust, it will allow the motor to rev a little bit freer. It will produce a little bit more power, because obviously more air is going in, a little bit more exhaust is going out. So apparently it's a way to get a decently torquey Evo. I had talked with the owner of Black Sheep Tuning down in North Carolina, and he had said that, by the way, nicest guy, he'll answer your questions on Instagram if you have any questions about Evos or DSMs. So if you need e-tuning or something, that's the guy to go to. He had said it's a pretty common setup where people will do that just for like reliability purposes, but at least it'll be still kind of a fun car. It'll be fun to drive. Like I said, pretty torquey, down low, and pretty good throttle response. But as far as the motor goes, it's still running the stock exhaust manifold. It's still got an internally gated wastegate on the turbo. Intercooler piping is all still stock. Haven't done anything to the intake manifold. It does have this somewhat aftermarket intake with the open filter, which looks dirty as anything. Obviously, it's running the standard mass airflow sensor for an Evo VIII. What have I done to it, though? Really, I haven't done too much to it. There's a lot of stuff that I do have to do to it. The only things that I've done so far besides stockpile parts is like I've replaced this cover because it was pretty beat up. Replaced the Mitsubishi cover on the valve cover because that also was pretty beat up. I did some cleaning. Me and my son actually went through and cleaned the cylinder head up top because this was just all caked in oil. Reason being, most likely, it does need a new valve cover gasket, and there is a bolt that's broken off in here. So eventually I will have to extract that, and I'll probably make a video on it. Other than that, things that I've done to the car, again, none of it's really anything impressive, or it's kind of just trying to get it back to where it should be and clean enough to want to work on it. I really just did like aftermarket radiator mounts because the other ones were all rusty looking. A couple of bolts here and there. I really went on like a kick on trying to get as many brand new OEM parts as I could to try to replace the old worn out rusted ones. And obviously I'm still going to be keeping all the hardware because as these cars get older, it's getting harder and harder to find, and websites are starting to charge a lot more. Like a wheel bearing for one of these is up to like $450 per wheel at this point, and people need wheel bearings, so they're going to spend the money on it. So I started stockpiling some stuff. You can see the motor mounts are a little rusty, so I have a new one of these to put in. I got new bolts for the headers or the exhaust manifold to the engine itself, so those will be replaced. New studs. I have new turbo hardware. It didn't come with any of the mounting points for being able to jack the motor if you do need to take the trans out or take the motor out. I do have a new intake that I'm going to install because this car is going to be switching to speed density. Everything I've read about Evos, and I had a DSM as my first car, so I have some 4G63 knowledge, but some things that I've read in the forums and on Facebook groups is that a lot of times these will be very finicky about if there's any problems with the mass airflow sensor, if there's any leaks, it's going to throw it into a limp mode that makes you not really be able to even drive the car. That's obviously not what I want with an older car. If I'm out with it, I want to be able to know that I can still get home. It'll drive like crap, but you will still be able to get home. So we'll be switching to speed density. So I will have to, I've already bought the kit. I will have to either look into getting new intercooler piping or trying to find someone to weld in a bung to put an IAT sensor. And I guess at that point, you take two of the wires, I believe it's the black and the blue and red, and you tap it into your new IAT sensor. That's going to go into the intercooler piping. And then it already has a mass sensor. So I do have an upgraded map sensor that I am going to be running, just because who knows how old this one is, and it's honestly what's more recommended for if you're trying to run a speed density setup. Other than that, there's not too much going on with the car. It does still have the stock intercooler from the stock Evo. It looks like all the piping is still stock as well. Another thing I am looking for, which did not come on the car, is all the wire mesh for the two slots here and then down here where the intercooler is. So if anyone knows, if anyone's selling it, let me know. I'd like to pick some up. But other than that, really the only thing up here that I've done is me and my son did go through and we refreshed the headlights because they were very frosted. This side didn't come out quite as good, but it's still not too bad. It looks rather new compared to what it did before. And like I said, all I really did in here was just kind of clean things up, trying to get it to look nicer again. But I probably will go through soon and do a video where I try to extract this bolt. I have a broken one here that I don't know why. One night when I went to go install this, it just decided to snap off. So I'll have to extract that one, and then I'll probably, in the same video, go through and replace the hardware on the exhaust manifold and the turbo. I do want to try to keep this build to be as close to stock as possible. Obviously, I haven't even verified that there's 272 cams in there. It's just from what the guy said, who I bought it from. But if there are, it's definitely not a bad setup for a street driving car, because it should be able to, like I said, have pretty good torque down low, good power. I'd like to keep it around, you know, low 300s on pump gas. There's no ethanol or anything like that I'm going to be doing. I want to kind of stay as close to a stock Evo VIII as I possibly can. But moving on from there, don't really know too much about the exhaust system. I do know that there is a catback exhaust, which I believe is also HKS. If you take a look from back here, so obviously you can see Evo RS, they don't have the rear windshield wiper, which apparently is a big deal to a lot of Evo guys, which I didn't realize, but it's kind of cool that I have it. It's got a nice big fat single exhaust. Don't know if we can see what kind it is. Yep, sure enough, it is HKS. It's pretty loud, not gonna lie. I will probably insert a clip somewhere right now so that you can hear it. Other than the exhaust, I'm not sure about the downpipe and what is on the car from the turbo back. It doesn't, from what I quickly saw, it doesn't look like it's aftermarket, which I probably will keep, just because, like I said, I want it to be kind of a nice stock feeling car. It does have lowering springs of some kind. I'm not really sure which kind, because I really haven't gotten into it to check it out. It came on Evo X stock wheels, which honestly, in my opinion, aren't the worst. It obviously needs some new rotors, probably some new brake pads. The calipers probably do need to be stripped and repowder coated if I want it to look nice. To be fair, the springs on it, they drop it down a little too low for my liking, especially if I'm going to try to drive it on the street. It is pretty low, and if you know anything about Evos, they have a really bad turning radius, and I didn't really believe it until I drove this thing in a parking lot. And you can cut the wheel all the way, and it's barely going to turn anywhere compared to like a Subaru now or my Golf. So I would like to eventually get it on some coilovers and raise it up a little bit, so maybe I can have a little more clearance, because right now I have no fender liners. And honestly, I don't want to be driving it around without fender liners on it, because, I mean, these cars are known to rust. I did check the rear arches, and I didn't see any rust there. So it is nice that he was telling the truth, that the shell was clean and it's not super rusted. Other than that, I haven't found any real big spots of Bondo or anything. I'm hoping that that's going to be the case and it won't end up having a lot of Bondo, because obviously that's not ideal. When I got the car, the interior was pretty dirty. Again, along with the whole RS theme, you can see, you know, they didn't come with power or anything, because they were a more track-inspired car. It is loud in the car when it's on. I've only driven it a few times, like I said, but it is pretty loud in the cabin when you decide to get on it. I tried to, again, in here, keep everything pretty much as stock as I could, replace any bolts that I could, new cabin air filter, just tried to clean it up. It does have an ACT clutch, I believe. The guy that I bought it from said he peeked in, he did see yellow, so he believed it was ACT, but he's not sure exactly what's on it. I do not hear a lot of clutch chatter as the car is running or idling. So I do think that it's a sprung clutch. It's not a single mass flywheel that's going to have a lot of vibration, because honestly, I don't really want that for this car, especially with how raw they're supposed to feel. But that is pretty much this car. Not really much more to say. Hopefully I'll be able to get it running soon. It's probably not highest on the list as far as priority. The STI is definitely more of my priority right now. But eventually I will get to this, and I'd like to give it the love that it deserves for being such a classic car. But with that being said, we'll move on to the Subaru now. So what we have here is my 2018 WRX STI. This is definitely the car that I know the most about. So it should be pretty easy to run through exactly what's done to it. Obviously, EJ25 motor. When I bought the car, I had been daily driving it for about 7,000 miles. I only was working like 20 minutes away from where I lived, so it wasn't getting a lot of miles every day. I did daily driver for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then I was just cruising one day. I wasn't beating on it or anything, and I just started getting a rod knock, which was a little surprising to me. Turns out it was still under force rod bearing had spun. It wasn't too bad, but obviously once that happens, you know, you have to go ahead and replace anything that the oil touches. And so I took it upon myself, took everything off the motor. Basically, the intake manifold came off, all the accessories, all the pumps, pulleys, took all of it off, pulled the motor out, broke it down. That's where I confirmed, after I got the oil pan off, I had seen some shards of metal in the pickup, and I was able to literally just move the rod bearing cap back and forth from like under where the oil pan would have been. So obviously I confirmed it was a spun rod bearing. I ended up giving it to a friend of mine who was rebuilding a WRX at the time, and he confirmed. He split the case in half, and he saw that the bearing tolerances were pretty tight even from the factory. Could have been why it spun. Honestly, I was beating on the car quite a bit back then. I was a little dumber and younger. Don't beat on your car, it's bad for it. So I went ahead and bought an IAG closed deck short block, forged internals, pistons and rods. Took that, got the heads redecked nice and flat, got some thicker head gaskets. I think the JE Pro Seals, which is what IAG suggested at the time. I got the heads refreshed, hot tanked, got one helicoil installed in the back that I actually kind of had forgotten about. Nothing done to the heads though. They're stock springs, retainers, valves, all that. So that would be a limiting factor as to how much power I could make in the future. What else is done to it though? You can see here I have intake manifold, or the intake manifold, the intake is from ETS. I honestly think it's the best setup because even the cob, it's kind of up here in the engine bay where it's still gonna be a little bit hot, but at least down here with ETS, it's, you know, right down near the wheel well. You can still get some cold air through the bumper, so it should be a cooler charge temp compared to if it was like up here in a box even. ETS front mount intercooler, I believe it's a 3-inch core, which should be plenty for what I'm planning to do with the car. Down here, another thing that I'm really happy I got, haven't really obviously got to run it yet, fluid damper crank pulley. It's just that these motors, obviously the crankshafts, they get a good beating from the pistons going side to side, and it is well balanced because they cancel each other out, but anything you can do to stop vibrations is going to be really good for the bearings on the crankshaft. I see like a lot of people in the past have been doing lightweight crank pulleys, which it may let it rev a little quicker, but for what you're giving up as far as absorption of vibrations to those bearings, it's just not worth it. So that's honestly, I know that's what most people who really know cars are going to run, and it's something you might want to look into. Just to try to keep the coolant temps down, just because, you know, as cool as you can be, the colder you be, the better. I got a coil rad radiator. It's just the stock fans, bolt right up to it. Torque Solutions silicone coolant hoses. What else do we got? Obviously an IAG air oil separator, radium fuel pressure regulator, all with -6 AN line. I believe they're the Cobb fuel line kit. Down in here, you can see, I don't know if you can, I have Cobb fuel rails with ID 1300 injectors. Those really weren't too bad to install. I did have to recrimp the connectors because the connectors for the new injectors don't obviously match up with the stock STI connectors, so that was a cool little learning curve. Got to learn how to do some crimping and connectors, which was kind of fun for me to learn. Other than that, I mean, we have an FP Blue journal bearing turbo right back here with, I don't know if you'd be able to see it down there, it's got a tile external wastegate, which I can't wait to be able to hear once it finally starts running. It does have a setup for a hybrid speed density, so it does have a new map sensor. Down here is all the connections for the map sensor to connect and work with the map sensor, and I have an IAT sensor that, it's kind of cool because from what I understand, you get the best of both worlds, where you do you are able to run the car if there is a problem. You can limp home, but they're also at the same time, it still uses the MAF sensor. So on idling and startup, apparently it's supposed to run like a little bit better. The intake elbow that I got, the inlet is a cob, which honestly I don't know if I had to go back and do it again. I don't know that I would go with the cob one. It is nice because it is silicone. It's nice and strong, but at the same time, everyone who is looking at the turbo inlets, they know how big it is. And people will say, like, you know, it's without taking the intake manifold off, it's pretty impossible to try to get that thing stuck in there. And I mean, I did it personally with the intake manifold off and then installed the TGVs in the manifold, and I still had a hard time being able to try to get it lined up where it would stay on the turbo and I could actually bolt down the manifold. So the car is going to be going on ethanol at some point. So I mean, it's hard to see, but I do have the ethanol sensor installed down there. The issues we're having with the car, bleeding the clutch. So motor was all back together. Everything was pretty much ready to go. Everything on my list had been knocked out. All I had left was to bleed the clutch. So the master cylinder's up there, slave cylinder's down right back here. But I've been having a bit of trouble with trying to bleed the system. I understand Subaru STI motors, they can be really tough to bleed from what I've seen from a couple of different videos. I'm not getting much pedal feel, which is kind of concerning. We had tried to bleed the clutch in the past and I heard a big popping noise because I think we popped it one too many times, pumped the clutch, and then my kids had kind of gotten my attention. So I came back, and when I came back, that's when I heard this like spring popping noise. So I'm not sure if the clutch collar has actually popped out of place or what's going on with it. So in the future, I'm going to try to get in there and see if I can figure out exactly what's going on and if I would be able to bleed the clutch. All right, now that you guys have seen the STI and the Evo, we can get to talking about the car that I drive every single day. It's 100% probably my favorite daily driver that I've ever had. It definitely beats the Subaru as far as comfortability when you're driving it, and that would be my 2017 Mk7 Golf R. It's a little bit rainy today, so it is going to be a bit of a challenge to try to show exactly everything about it, because obviously I don't want to get rained on. So I'll start with the wheels and tires. So what we do have is NKRPF ones. They are 18 by 8.5 plus 35 offset. It's the perfect spec that I wanted. It's the color that I wanted. The tires are Continental DSW 06 pluses. They are 235/40 R18. I do like the way that the wheels fill out a little bit more and that they are a little bit meatier. I have been running those tires. This is my second set now, and honestly I can't say enough about them in the snow, in the rain, in the dry. When you're driving with them in dry weather, they work just fine. They grip up nicely, they don't slip. In the snow, as long as you're not, you know, driving around like an idiot. I have never had any problems with sliding. They've always been really grippy. I did a recent trip from Beverly, Massachusetts all the way up to Portland, Maine, and it was snowing. They hadn't cleared the roads yet. I had no issues at all. The brakes on the car, when I got them, it was a stock setup, but the pads were already pretty worn down, and I'm not going to replace just pads, so I went with like every other FCP Euro shopper out there with a Golf R. I went with the Zimmermann cross-drilled rotors with EBC red stuff pads. And some people hate on the EBC pads. I honestly have nothing but great things to say about them. I just followed the bedding in process, and I've had no squealing, no problems with them overheating or anything like that. Not that I really track the car, but I've never had a problem with braking. It was a pretty straightforward install. Didn't take, you know, more than half a day. What else do we have? So 6-speed manual transmission. It does have an upgraded clutch, which does have a decent bit of chatter to it, which honestly doesn't really bother me too much. When I bought the car, it did have an upgraded clutch in it prior to me buying it, which I guess was deterring people from buying it because they were concerned about the chatter, thinking it might have been rod knock. So they put a stock clutch into it, brand new, and I'll go into it more, but it does have a tune on it and some performance parts. And so because of the tune, I knew that it was going to be making more power and that the stock clutch wouldn't be able to handle it, because these cars, they can't even really handle stock power very well before the clutch starts slipping. A lot of people think that because it's a Golf R stock, it would have a stronger clutch, but the 6-speed manual transmissions, they basically just come with a GTI clutch, and it's basically topping out with the power that the Golf has on it when it's an R stock. So I went with a APR Stage 2 low torque tune in the hopes that the low torque would maybe save my clutch a little bit. That was not the case. It started slipping after, I don't know, 30,000 miles probably of daily driving it. So it does have a Stage 2 daily south bend clutch on it. It comes with a single mass flywheel, which honestly, I did have to go back, being that it's a daily driver. I mean, the STI has a single mass flywheel as well, but as being a daily driver, there is a decent amount of clutch chatter. I probably would have gone with a sprung flywheel, something that'll absorb some vibration a little bit more, because honestly, when I am driving it, if it's in gear and the RPMs are kind of low and the turbo hasn't really started spooling yet, if you do try to give it some gas, it definitely does shudder. The car will vibrate a little bit, so I had to sort of change my driving style just a little bit, just to understand that if I do need to try to accelerate, I do have to downshift a little bit more than I would have with the stock clutch that was on it. But honestly, as far as reliability goes, I've had no issues with it. Again, I followed the break-in procedure. I did 500 miles of absolutely zero boost, and then I did another 500 miles of like very, very low moderate boost, like not at all wide open throttle, nothing touching the top of the rev range before you have to shift. I was really making sure I babied it so that way, you know, it would be reliable. I wouldn't roast the friction disc too much. But with that being said, maybe I'll take you in and show you the engine bay. So please forgive me, it is raining, so this is going to be probably rather quick, because I don't want a bunch of rain getting in the engine bay. And please forgive the fact that it's super dirty, because again, I daily drive this, so it does get dirty. And honestly, it hasn't been very nice on my days off recently, so I haven't been able to detail it at all. But everything in here, basically, I bought, the car already had on it when I bought it. The prior owner, he definitely did take care of the car. He knew what he was doing. There's a ton of maintenance service items that are like in the Carfax that are there from him. As far as I can tell, he always changes oil on time, because when I first got the car, I did replace the PCV valve, and you can see the camshafts from in there, and they were like perfectly silver, and that was at 80,000 miles when I bought it. So he definitely did his job, trying to take care of the motor and make sure, you know, it was healthy. The intake is an APR carbon fiber intake. Carbon fiber doesn't really do anything, it's just kind of cool looking, which then does go back into an APR turbo inlet elbow, which just opens it up a little bit more, and it's a very restrictive point for the turbocharging system on these cars. It still has the stock IS38 turbo, which I probably will have to replace soon. It's starting to have problems with the wastegate, which unfortunately is a very common issue with these cars. But I mean, you can get a brand new turbo IS38 from FCP Euro. I think it's about like $1,100, maybe $1,200. But you do have a warranty on it, so if anything happens to it in the future, you can then return it. You do have to ship it back and, you know, uninstall it, but you can return it and they'll send you a brand new turbo. So in the future, I will be getting it from them just to have that warranty. And I know a guy who's actually used it, and they shipped him a new turbo. Off the back side, the hot side of the turbo, it does go down to a catted APR downpipe. I think it's like a 3 or 4 inch, I'm not 100% sure, which then goes to a stock catback system, which in my opinion, you know, I drive this car around daily. I have to have my kids in it. I have to drop them off to school. So I do try to keep it nice and quiet, and it does a great job at that. But you know, when you do get on it, you can really hear the downpipe, and it does make it sound pretty throaty. Other than that, I mean, I've done, you know, the intake valve cleaning on it. I do need to replace the water pump. It's starting to get a little coolant smelly. It's running RS7 spark plugs, which I've had no issues with. Being that it's on a stage 2 tune, things do run a little bit hotter. So I got the 1-step colder plugs, and so far everything's been great. As far as future plans, I don't really have any. The car was pretty well sorted from when I bought it. I mean, it already has you can't really see it, but it's got an upgraded APR intercooler in the stock location. So it's not a front mount, like a true front mount, but it is sandwiched in there with the radiator and the condenser. As far as suspension goes, the only thing that it does have APR lowering springs, because these cars, they do come with stock adaptive dampening, so you can actually control between sport mode and like a comfort mode. And when you're in sport mode, it is very bouncy. You can feel every bump. It's very sporty. It's very nice to drive if you're trying to really get on it. But then let's say you just want to drive down the road, you know, cruising at 50, just kind of chilling. You can put it in comfort mode, and it honestly does level it out where it's very absorbent and you don't feel every single bump on the road. But the car, honestly, inside I haven't really done anything. I just did like a new shift knob from Likewise, which honestly, it's one of, as far as like modifications go that really make a difference. You know, you touch your shift knob every single day when you drive, if you're driving a manual, and you have to like what you're doing or what you're working with. So check out Likewise. I mean, obviously I'm not sponsored by them, but I really liked the quality of what they sent me, and you know, they seem like a pretty good company. Other than that, it's basically everything that's done to this car. Like I said, I honestly really love it. It's one of the funnest cars I've driven. And then I had a Jetta GLI before this, a Mark 6.5, same motor, and I never had issues with it. This car has literally given me, other than the clutch eventually slipping and wearing out, I've had really no issues with it. I'm lucky enough that my cousin is a master Volkswagen tech. So again, this is my daily. I like to work on cars, but I'm not a professional, and I need this car to run. So I've dropped it off to him a few times. He's done a bunch of maintenance for me. He did the clutch install for me. He did the rear main seal while he was in there. I had him do new timing chain tensioner, new covers for the timing components. He's done quite a bit. So shout out to him for making sure the car is well sorted. He even said, like, pretty much when he looked at it, everything was really well sorted. Everything looked great, clean. And he said it's a really solid car in his opinion, which obviously, coming from a master Volkswagen tech, that's a good thing. But that's pretty much it for the Golf R. Like I said, I can't say enough about it. So that kind of brings us to the point of, you know, which car do I like the best? As far as daily driving, hands down, the Golf R takes it. There is no car in this garage that's better at daily driving and more comfortable, but at the same time still kind of fun than this car. The STI certainly does feel a bit more raw. It's got good creature comforts. It's moderately comfortable, but it is very loud in the cabin. And with the sound deadening the way it is, it's a very loud car. With the exhaust that I have on it, it's a Gretty exhaust. It is pretty loud in there, and it can get kind of vibraty. The Golf, however, you can drive down the road and you can kind of actually hear the conversation you're having. The 6-speed in this definitely does have shorter gear ratios to get the better acceleration, which you do feel when you're driving the car. But in the same respect, because they're shorter, you're on the highway trying to do 80 miles per hour, and you're pinned at like 4,000 RPM, and it gets pretty loud and it really kills your gas mileage. The Golf, however, being that it's a Haldex all-wheel drive system, it does save a little bit better on gas because it's mostly front-wheel drive until it has to be, and the wheel speed sensors will kick in the rear. But at the same time, because of the gearing and the transmission, the acceleration in second and third gear might be a little bit slower and a little less torquey than in the STI, but at the same time, when you're on the highway at 80, you're sitting around 32 to 3,500 RPM, so it's a lot nicer of a place to be. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say refined, it just feels different in the acceleration, where like the STI will definitely, it feels like the tires are clawing into the ground and dragging you forward. And the best way I've been able to describe the Golf is that it's sort of like a really high pressured rubber band is behind you that's been released, and it's pushing you forward. They're both fast, you know, respectively fast, but it's just a different feeling. And as far as the Evo, I haven't really even driven it enough to know. Like I said, I drove it around a parking lot, but I haven't been like daily driving it or anything, but I'm definitely excited to be able to start doing that eventually, at least going to car shows. But with all that being said, it's pretty much up to speed on all the cars I have, what their issues are, what the plans are, what I like about them, what I don't like about them. So again, this is my first video. I'm just trying to hold myself accountable so that in the future I can continue working on them to put out content and hopefully finish them quicker. So if you like what you've been seeing, or at least in this first video, give it a like, subscribe, comment, share, do all that stuff so I can maybe try to grow the channel. And until then, I guess see you guys next time. Peace out.